Lord, thank you for a beautiful day and a good life and a great community. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
RJ, let's say and RJ, show all present in the county. And the agenda is before you.
I move the agenda.
Second.
Move in second for the discussion. Not hearing you, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, there we go. And we're at, I think, citizen comments, right? So any citizen comments? James, come on up.
I guess it's on. It didn't sound like it. James Alexander, Legacy Ridge. I don't know all the details about Henry Road overpass, but I'd like to understand if we're considering safe passage of bicycles and pedestrians and cars all at once on the overpass. And there are a lot of ways to do that. It doesn't have to be sidewalk, but anyway, that's what I'd like to learn tonight.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Any other comments? Not hearing you, we're going forward, right? Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to stand at the podium if that's okay. And we have a short presentation. I hope it'll take 5 minutes. And then we really want to hear from you on which direction to go when it comes to what we call construction management. But I wanted to give you an update and some background and then go from there. And then I'll also answer James' question, yes to bikes, yes to pedestrians, and yes to golf carts and cars.
You could have made me wait.
So, could have been the end till we get to it. So today, thank you first for agreeing to have this meeting. It's an important meeting because as we negotiate with WashDOT, we need to keep the ball rolling. And not having the council meeting for 3 weeks, it would have been a lot to give to you in one council meeting. So with that, I'm just going to get started. There's some progress we've made. Oh, RJ, can you hand me the clicker? Progress we've made since we talked, and maybe this is just an update for everyone. Centennial's property was the major 100-foot corridor to build the project is complete. Sean is taking care of filing and recording the documents, but it's pretty much done. The acquisition is complete. Spokane County is under discussion, and we have a 9,000 square foot, so it's roughly 90 by 100 easement that we need from Spokane County. I'm going to give you an update later on because I don't want to get bogged down in that, but it is on the critical path, and we cannot execute our WashDOT agreement, our agreement with WashDOT, until we have secured an easement from Spokane County. And then the Trans-Canadian is a gas pipeline on the north end of the project. They've been very responsive, very cooperative, and Scott is expecting no issues with them. So, as I said, and I want to underscore, Spokane County's easement is on the critical path. So, I also wanted to update you, and I had provided in your mailbox copies of all my edits from July 22nd. They got back to me, and all of the financial arrangements, edits that I made, they have not countered. They've countered on a few other things, but they have not responded to alter what my edits were. So that's really good news, because if you read my edits, it's basically how we had interpreted and understanding the distribution of funds and costs of the project. So very specifically is full credit for our right-of-way. Anything over $20.9 million would be Liberty Lakes. Let's see, what else was a sticky point is the $6 million, we will get a credit for the right-of-way against the $6 million, and we will be responsible for all overages on the project, anything over $20.9 million. But this is what we were expecting all along, so this is really positive. And it just, as a matter of course, if you look under the section C, D, E in the recitals and section 2 of my edits, those they have not countered on yet. So that's really positive. What they've countered on is pretty minimal. They want, instead of having open books, they want mutual reporting. I'm okay with that. Basically, we share each other's data back and forth. It's not a big thing. And the table that was in my edits, they didn't want the table in the agreement. So it's fine. I think my exhibits paraphrase what the table showed. So to me, it was a non-issue. So to sum this up, WashDOT's negotiations are going well, okay? But a little background on terminology, and this is not meant to educate you, but I just want to share with you some of the words that we use and concepts. I know some of you have project management experience, so it'll be new to you, but I want to make sure that we all have a really good understanding of when we say design and construction management. So, first point I want to make is that this is the very first road that the city of Liberty Lake has designed ever, because all the roads in our city were either built by the county before we incorporated or built by developers. We've improved roads, you know, we've done overlays and roundabouts and traffic signals, but we have never constructed a new road on dirt. This is a very first for us. So what goes into design? Okay, when you have a new road, you have to do all the survey work, geotechnical, soil study, you have to do the footprint of the project, the profile of the project, you have to do environmental, you have to do, Scott, what am I forgetting? Okay, all that stuff goes before you even pick up a pen to start designing. So this project is I'm going to call it a very straightforward project. It's not complicated, but that design undertaking is something that WashDOT and the city both agree that the city of Liberty Lake can manage it. So just like we managed Harvard, we would hire a design consultant, that person would work for Scott, and we would design the road. And what we would be responsible for numerous iterations and reviews with all of WashDOT's different divisions, and there's a lot of them, but you have to take it to 30, take it to 60, take it to 90, take it to 100, and we have to deliver to them biddable documents. So with all of the WashDOT requirements. It's not complicated, it's just very, very intense, I'll say. So then the next terminology I want to talk with you about is what we call CM, or construction management. So when you are the manager of a construction project in the public sector, you're responsible for many things, not just doing the inspection and the compaction testing and the asphalt testing. You're also responsible for prevailing wages. You're also responsible for what we call RFIs, requests for information. You're also responsible for approving change orders, accepting alternatives, means and methods, substitutions. I could go on and on. So it's not just sitting out there in the field. You're managing the administration of the contract, all the adds and deductions and subtractions. So we're very fortunate in Liberty Lake that Scott brought probably, I don't know, 20, 30 years of experience. Okay, more. Plus. And he's done this type of thing as a project manager and as a construction manager. So this, again, is not complicated, but it takes a lot of resources to do it. So that's kind of the terminology that I'm going to talk about for the remainder, design and construction management. Okay, so we have three options, and this is in the contract, and WashDOT has given us these three options. Option one, city designs and the city CMs. If we are the CM, we control the project. We also own the bridge. So I'm going to get through what that means in a minute. Option two, the city designs and WashDOT CMs. WashDOT owns the bridge. Option three, the city designs and we split the CM between the structure and the approaches. The roundabouts on either end, the approaches, the landscaping, whatever. So basically we would split it. So I'm going to go through what these three options mean in more detail, and then we can have discussion. Okay, option one, the city owns the bridge. That means that if it gets hit, if it needs structural repair, we would be responsible for that. There's very few cities that own bridges over state facilities. Marysville, Tacoma are two examples. RJ did a lot of calling around, and our insurance company won't insure it. We'd have to buy something else. The rewards. The benefit of this scenario is that we control the construction management, we control the dollars, we control the schedule. That's the positive. The risk is we own the bridge. And for a small city like this, that's a huge responsibility. The rewards for us doing the CM, WashDOT will tell you our prices would be the same, that there's no savings if we manage the CM. I'm going to guess there's probably up to maybe $500,000 to $1 million worth of savings to the project if we manage. But the risks are, the structure itself is probably valued at $4 to $5 million. So it's an option. I'll leave it there. The next option, WashDOT owns the bridge. They manage the CM, so we don't have to manage it. That's the reward. The risks are they're managing it. So they control everything, and they have agreed to be very transparent and inclusive in the exchange of information. But when they manage the project, it's their project. They're going to approve change orders. They're going to approve substitution of materials, all that. I did tell them that we're better suited to manage the landscape piece because we've done this before and we've kind of figured out what to do with. In a washed out contract, if you have landscaping, the warranty's for 3 years. Contractors hate that because they have to preserve that landscaping for 3 years, and it comes at a cost. It comes at a premium. So we're better with Jen and the landscaper working together to do plant selections and irrigation stuff. So that is an option. So the reward again is that we wouldn't have to hire people to do this. They're set up to do it, and the risks are they control the budget. They control the schedule. Okay? The next option, I'm kind of repeating myself, but WashDOT owns a bridge. We would split it so that they do basically everything that's an elevation and the overpass, but the approaches to that ramps would be managed by us. The local roads that are on the surface, so to speak, the curb gutter sidewalk, the landscaping, the roundabouts would be managed by us. Now let me tell you the downside of this approach. There's positives and there's negative. One of the negatives is when you split if you split apart a contract, you have duplications and interconnections that can be challenging. In other words, we do construction administration, they do construction administration. We bid an award, they bid an award. So you're duplicating resources. In the end, it could cost you more. So but it is an option. With that, I think that was all I had. One thing I do want to mention, though, is the life of a bridge built with current standards, current setbacks, current safety issues, all of those things. The life of a bridge is about 80 years. That doesn't include the deck. You have to redeck it more often. Regardless of what we do, the City of Liberty Lake will operate and maintain the bridge. So if Chief Asmus wants to close it down, he can close it down. If we have to stripe it, put asphalt on it, whatever. We do that on Harvard. We would have to do that on Henry, even regardless of who owns it. So we have to operate and maintain the bridge regardless of who owns it. But it's treated as a local street. It's called a minor arterial, I think is what we ended up calling it. And so we manage its operations and maintenance. I think I covered everything. Anything else I should add? Okay.
Scott, thanks for great coverage.
Now Scott can answer the hard questions.
Now Scott can answer the hard questions. So the question that I have is having been involved in construction of bridges for 30 or 40 years, what's your professional opinion of what we should do?
I think we should take the option where we do the design. That way we can control the scope of it. And we'd let WashDOT do the construction management. That way they own the bridge and we don't have to take that risk.
So that's option 3?
That was option 2.
Two.
And honestly, that was the direction I was leaning before you even said anything, so I appreciate your thoughts on that. I have a lot of concerns of us owning a bridge, especially when we can't insure it. I think there's a reason why there's only 3 cities that have done that, because it's too much to take on. There's a lot of risk associated with it. I am much more comfortable with option 2.
Yeah, when you think about how many bridges around here get hit, there's one over in Post Falls that gets hit regularly, but it was no, seriously, and they damaged the girders. So there have been 2 or 3 instances. Well, you know about the one down in Napa. That one keeps getting hit. It's a railroad bridge, but it keeps getting hit. There's trucks stuck under that all the time. But it's in general, it's pretty rare. And the reason those bridges have problems is because they're old bridges and they were built at the wrong elevation, whereas we'd be up to the new interstate standards, so a lot less likely to be hit.
And I can add too, if we were a large organization that had resources, like City of Spokane has a bridge crew, Spokane County has a bridge crew, you do inspections on an annual basis. I wouldn't even bat an eye about taking it on if we were a large organization. We just don't have the resources, and we don't have access to the resources either.
Chris, did you have?
Yeah, I think you had his hand up first.
My only question was, if it gets hit, what does it cost? I mean,
Excuse me?
bridge gets hit, what is it, I mean, what kind of costs are we looking at as a city?
For what?
Repairs?
Girder repairs? Well,
What would they be?
the worst case scenario is that somebody really comes into it. Like there was one that happened a couple months ago here in Spokane area, that a piece of crane boom came loose and it came around and swung into the girder, and it totally took the girder out, so you could see gapes in it and the tendons. So in a case like that, you'd have to pull. I'm getting your answer. You have to pull the deck off, and then you have to replace the girder, and then redeck it, and off you go. And the cost for that's probably in the $1 million range.
So that's multiple times over.
Million to $1.5 million.
Saving $500,000 on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scott, so given our history with WashDOT, I know you obviously weren't here, but you lived here when the roundabout at Harvard and Mission was put in. How do you anticipate trying to keep us from running into a similar situation where the project just, in our budget, we had all kinds of problems with them managing that?
Yeah, I think one of the things we've talked about is a possible modified version 3, where we just take the roundabouts, where they handle the whole big project, and we just take the roundabouts in some way, shape, or form. And we really haven't come to a conclusion on that. On the south end of the project, we're not even sure it's going to be a roundabout because of right-of-way issues. So that would. So I understand your concern, and that's one of the risks of going with WashDOT Construction Management is they have a lot of resources to pull from, and they can, and they will. So if they have a minor right-of-way problem, Katie and I would probably just handle it. If they have a right-of-way problem, they pull in maybe possibly Olympia and a local right-of-way guy.
So what's different here, Chris, is that we've asked for a regular reporting structure so that if it's going to go over, we know about it sooner than later. With the one there, they spent the contingency and then some before we even knew that they were spending the contingency. So long story short, if we're going over, they'll have to be able to justify why, and we'll know about it during the course of the project. And we are responsible for the overages, so.
Understood. And, I guess my concern was, I started off not trusting WashDOT because of our past history with them, and then I came in and we had a pretty good discussion, and I actually left that meeting feeling pretty good, and then we saw what happened in between then and now, so I'm back to not trusting them as far as I can throw them, and so I want to make sure that you guys have a solid plan to make sure we have regular updates and regular sharing the costs and what's going on, so we are aware ahead of time as much as possible.
Yeah, it is written into the agreement, so.
So I'd observe, I feel comfortable with option 2 regarding WashDOT-CM, specifically for the ownership component. I recognize our organization's long-term lack of resources to be able to support the ongoing maintenance of such a construction.
That, if I'm correct, even if they own it, we're still going to maintain it after it's been completed. So we still have to supply the money for maintenance, right? And that alone makes me wonder, why are we allowing them to take over the contract management when we're going to have to do any repairs to it, including whatever they do to it? All right? I mean, we're going to ask them to go in and save money, correct? We're not going to be able to make them save money because they own it. They're doing the contract management. So we can go in and say, oh, I see that you've made a change order here and it's going to cost $500,000 more. And there's not one person sitting here that's going to be able to say, we're not going down that road. They're going to say, oh yeah, you're going because we're running it. So I think we need to think really closely about what option we choose, because we're still on the hook. Whether they own it, we own it, we're still on the hook. Now, I would much prefer seeing us take care of the roundabouts. That we've got experience and we do darn good at it. Okay? I think we've proven that we can do those and we can do them at a cost. But we don't have the resources they have for that. We're too thin to manage it. But at the same time, there's got to be some method of cooperation that says, yeah, you're gonna own this, et cetera, but you're spending our money. It's kind of like us spending the public's money right now. I mean, we answer for spending their money. These people are not gonna answer to us for spending the money. So what do we do with it?
Scott, the goal, and I think in the options that we want, is that the city will design the bridge with the scope. According to James's comments at the beginning, I could have bicycle lanes and sidewalks and all that stuff. So you set the scope for the bridge. And you also set the scope for the approaches and the roundabouts and whatever else takes place in this bridge. And that's the scope. And that is those design documents that you're going to deliver to DOT, correct?
Yes.
So when you deliver the design documents to DOT, the next step is, okay, they say, okay, we're going to build X, Y, Z. So we're going to build, we'll just take the overpass in and of itself, the concrete. We talked about the girders and so forth. So we're going to build that. And so they put that out for bid based on our specs, our scope, and the design that we gave them. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then once that goes out, and it goes out to 2 or 3 bidders, then those bidders come back and say, okay, here's our bid, kind of like we did with the pedestrian bridge. Here's our bid to put up the bridge, and they're going to accept one of those bids based on the contractor, the previous experience, all those other.
Low bid.
Our bid.
Pardon?
It'll be low bid.
No, but I mean, you have to be an acceptable contractor even to have the low bid, right? And so the issue then is that the contractor's coming back and said, hey, we're going to build this bridge based on these numbers. Here it is to you, DOT, and here it is to you, Scott, City of Liberty Lake. And you're going to manage those numbers, aren't you? Isn't that correct?
Right, Mayor, the hard costs that you're describing aren't where I have concern, and I don't know about you, Scott, it's the soft costs. The soft costs generally make up 30% of the budget.
Okay, and the soft costs are what?
Our DOT,
Change orders.
no, it's DOT's administrative costs. So whenever a public agency delivers a project, probably about 30% of the budget goes to the soft costs. Okay.
No, I understand that.
So the
too.
hard costs aren't the concern. I don't
That's
think
the trade-off. I mean, you're sitting there saying, okay, and the bridge is, normally I looked at the load at about 20%, but if it's a $10 million bridge and the load is $2 million, whatever, is the net savings worth that overall from our standpoint?
So we have not seen their breakdown, cost breakdown. I haven't seen it.
No.
We've asked for them. For us to evaluate the budget with the scope, we need to see their breakdown, and we have not received that yet.
Okay, well, but so that's basically the next step. I mean, we're trying to talk about what's in our best interest. I think, I don't know, we've heard a number of suggestions that we're going to let DOT own the bridge. We are going to provide, I think, in my best understanding what we talked about tonight, provide the scope and the design of the bridge. And then from that, we're going to start to sort out how much load might be applied to that design and cost. Is that correct?
Load.
Soft costs.
Soft costs. So basically what you do is you take your budget, you allocate it to scope and administrative costs, and then you manage it to that budget. That's generally how you do it. And we have not seen their breakdown, but I think, Scott, you've done some preliminary calculations that we think the money that we've seen on this scope is sufficient. We don't think that the scope is out of whack with the budget.
Okay.
But we're not confirming that till we see the breakdown. But what we've seen so far, we think there's enough money to build the project and pay for the soft costs.
Okay.
If it's well managed.
Anybody else want to ask?
So when you talked about option 3, your concerns were you're both kind of managing the CM side of it. And there's multiple deals being approved at the same time. But if we set it up kind of how you initially explained it, to where we're in charge of very specific things within the scope of the project, they're in charge of very specific things, why would those concerns of overlay still be there?
What we call project interface. So generally we have one designer that will design the whole thing. So they're coordinating everything structurally, mechanically, conduits, girders, everything is coordinated. And then we pull out pieces of the package that we're going to manage, okay? So we bid and award ours, they bid and award theirs. Scott, help me out here. But basically, it's the interface in the field. So one contractor is going to end here, and another contractor is going to start there. Well, you didn't compact it. Hey, your conduit's in the wrong location. It's the fit in the field is challenging.
Yeah, and then you've got 2 project managers, 2 superintendents, and 2 foremen, and
Two
so
administrators.
there's a lot of double
So
up.
you duplicate. So DOT, well, Mike Gribner would tell you there's no savings if you start splitting it apart because of the duplication.
Thank you.
I'm still a little concerned about it. Can anyone tell me that WashDOT is going to put out the bid, it's going to come back from however many people want to be vendors, they're going to pick a person, okay, a firm, and they're going to let the contract. Does anyone here in the city of Liberty Lake have a say-so over who they pick or at what price they pick?
No, it's law. We follow the law.
Yep.
So we don't have any choice about any of that. But yet, we're financially responsible for everything this organization does. But yet we have no financial controls over it.
We do if we CM.
If we what?
If we are the CM,
Yes, if we are, yeah.
they're going to follow the law.
In my opinion, that's unsustainable just because of our size. Okay, we just got too many projects going on with one engineer. So I'm still concerned that we're just turning it over to WashDOT. We may do some roundabout work, that's great, I understand it, I trust that. But overall, we're putting a lot of trust in this organization to do us right. And we have basically zero control over the way they spend funds. So, would we do that under any other circumstance if it wasn't a grant? Okay, I mean, the grant still costs us and the state, and, you know, people, it still costs us, and this is public money. But I know our goal is we don't want to let go of that grant because it's a hefty grant, $20 million, come on, okay? But are we willing to gamble what we'd have to gamble to see that through? And would we do that under any other circumstance other than somebody standing here with a grant? Okay? And at what point would you say you'd do it? What if it was a $10 million grant? Would you still be interested in unknown amounts? So anyway, those are just some questions that I have, but I think we're on, you know, we have to look at everything, and I thank you for going out and doing this much work on it to see where we're at. What do you think?
So I will say all projects have a risk component, and it's having people that know how to manage risk. And it's a risk for the council to decide to obligate us, if you approve the contract, to obligate us for all the overages, when we can't guarantee you that we control them. And that is a risk. So I don't want to paint it any other way.
No. And to be perfectly, I'm sorry,
It's okay.
but to be perfectly honest, not only can we not control, we won't control. It's not our bailiwick. I mean, it's not going to be even served to us. We're not going to have the option. So to pretend that, yeah, we may have some problems, no, we're not. Maybe we will have problems because we don't have any control. We got a mayor, he's going to be pretty much hamstrung. We got a city planner, city administrator, and engineers. They're going to have to stand by on the side and watch. And somebody else is spending the money. We need to step up and pay the bill at some point.
I think it all goes back to your house, you build it, you built a house, or, you know, you come up, this is, and where you really control this, I think, from what's laid out before us, is the ability to design it and scope it. You really do. I mean, there's only, you know, I don't know you, Scott, but I mean, there's only a few companies that make the girders, and you know, the cost of the girders are pretty well prescriptive. The cost of cement is pretty well prescriptive. The cost of fill is pretty much prescriptive. And so you get down to a point where here's the bid, here's the project, here's the design project that we designed, not DOT, we did. And here's the full component of blueprints, 20 copies, whatever it is. They go out to bid, and they come back with a prescriptive price. And they say, okay, to build that bridge, it's going to cost you yada, yada, yada. And then we're sitting there saying, well, we'll accept it.
I don't know if we're gonna have that option.
Well, somebody's going to, you know, again, what you do is if there's a point in time where you go out and you say, and maybe this is part of the contract, if we're going to bid this, if it comes in over what the estimate is, right, you're going to have to make a choice whether you want to go forward or not. Because if a $10 million bridge comes in at $100 million, you're going to make a choice, no matter whose money it is, that, hey, this is something that we cannot afford. At the same point in time, I think we had the issue with, going back to the pedestrian bridge, which Scott is very familiar with, is that the DOT estimate was $1.5 million, I think, at the time. And the actual bridge built was about 1.1 or 1.1 plus, I don't remember exactly. And that was with, I think you can speak to that, I think they managed everything other than you, or the city was involved in management.
No, it was washed out.
It was all washed out.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they came in with their estimate or their projected cost of 1.5. We bid the bridge out. I think there was a lower bidder than the one that actually got it, I think. But he wasn't qualified, as I remember right. Or didn't respond right.
Responsive. You have to be responsive and qualified.
Yeah, so he missed that cut. But then we still got the bridge at $1.1 million, about $400,000 or $300,000 underneath the estimate of DOT. And everybody's been happy with it for 20 years.
I do want to add, if you are considering doing the CM, and we could hire someone to do that under our control, and the project would pay for their salary. So I want to mention that. If you wanted the city to be a CM, either in a split model, option 3 or option 1, is we could hire that person and the project would pay for their salary.
So Kate, so with regards to contract management, construction management, at what point might we be able to have a seat at the table if there are change orders and things like that for us? Would we have an opportunity to review those before somebody approves them on the WashDOT side? A chance to move over there?
You know, Scott, this is not a complicated project. We don't have to manage traffic. That was a big impact on the roundabout at Harvard, was the traffic management plan was so expensive, and the contractor has no incentive to pull back because they want to put they want to reduce their risk on the traffic management. There is no traffic management on this job, except at the roundabouts. And so the good news is there's not going to be a lot of, it's a straightforward project. The walls are
MSC. Mechanical stabilized.
Mechanical, they're tie-back walls. So it's, in the scope of bridges, it's pretty simple if you do bridges. It's not a complex project. But Chris, where we can manage it is when we have these reporting cycles, we can see what happens. The other thing we could say is, okay, WashDOT, we have a contingency here, and we don't want you to spend this contingency without getting our approval, but at the end of the day, the contract requires that we would pay for all overages. So
I think, so Greaves Ferry in Idaho went up really quickly, at least it seemed in my mind. I don't think it's nearly as long from road to road as ours would be, but I would be curious to see how this project stacks up against that one as to what they
that was a design build, but Scott, are you familiar with Greaves Ferry?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Is that where 41 goes
off?
off?
Before 41, it connected Celtice to, I think it's Commissioner Appleway.
Across Post Falls, goes out where I'm going.
Oh, yeah, right, okay,
Yeah.
sure.
I just kind of be curious to see how this compares to that cost one, or estimate-wise versus their actual cost, considering the fact that,
Is that a 2-lane?
I think I've only driven over
I was
once.
for
I
it.
can't remember.
I don't know.
I would venture to guess, and I think I'd asked them once before, but it's about a $12 million project, $10 to $12 million bridge that they put up. This is, what, 6-8 years ago, or whatever it was.
No, just
It's only
over
been a couple of years.
2 years ago.
Grangebury,
Yeah,
when-
Beck was
when they
probably,
started.
Beck Road was more recent. I mean, it
Well,
was
that
about 5 or
included
6
the
years ago.
interchange.
It included interchange.
Yes, Greensbury was just overpass, but again, DOT, or Post Falls will have that number for you. Real simple.
If I could, Katie, can you, current estimate rate is a Scott. Current estimate with the credit for the easements and those sorts of things, what's the estimate today that the city will owe if everything goes perfectly?
So based on my edits that haven't been accepted formally,
Right,
but
yeah.
informally,
With those?
would be
yeah.
$1 million.
Okay.
So how I get to that is it's 6 million minus 5 is 1, and then anything over 20.9 million.
Perfect.
So
So for a project like this, I'm now directing more at Scott. What's a pretty bad scenario percentage-wise for a project like this to go over? That's a hard question to answer, isn't it?
Well, typically on bridges where you get into problems is on the underground. And we're fortunate on this, it's shallow spread footings. So there's fairly low risk. You know, like a lot of times they do pile driving or they go deep shafts or drilled shafts, and that's where you get a lot of risk. So I would say the risk factor on this one's fairly low.
plus it's never been developed before, so you don't have bones and
It's greenfield, yeah.
tanks and things.
10 or 20% over? I mean, is there a percentage we could put on it and say, gosh, going pretty bad, we're going 10% over, 20% over, 50% over?
I would say 10% would be a high number. Because like I said, once you get out of the ground, it's all just per the contract plans. There's no
For the
unknown.
whole project, we're talking about another $2 million or $2.6 million bucks.
We don't have an idea.
We don't have an idea, but I've got a reason to go this way. Say the question that I would pose to the council is, what's this project worth to us? Meaning, is it worth $3 million bucks? Is it worth $5 million bucks? If somebody came and said, you get a bridge and you got to spend $5 million bucks right now, would you say yes? My answer would be, yeah, probably. I think this is a great economic development project for the city. It's going to be great living north and south. Homeowners, both sides, businesses, both sides. We've already made a council priority to say we want new businesses. This project would be worth $5 million bucks to me. If you went and said $10 million, I'd start going, whoa, we got to really slow down when we start going a little more. And I think that we should think about it in that sort of scope. Say, right now we're at 1. If it goes really poorly, we think we're maybe at 3.6. I'm saying 10% of 26 million bucks. A lot of things go wrong at that. It's not just a bridge that went wrong, but my opinion is this project is worth 3.6 million bucks to the city from an economic development standpoint. But you can argue all you want, but
No, I'm not arguing.
Yeah.
I'm just cautioning, please,
Yeah.
let's don't go down a fairy tale road, okay? And I'm not saying what you created was, I'm just saying, let's not go down the whole, well, okay, we'll spend $3 million, and we have no clue what that's gonna be. But everybody's happy, and all of a sudden we latch on and we say, yeah, oh yeah, we want that $3 million, we'll take that bridge. In reality, we don't know what the cost is yet.
I want it less than $1 million.
Oh, I want it a lot less too, but
We have to assign some sort of data ratios to this in order to make a decision. And we don't know, but we can make educated assumptions on these things. If we think it would double.
what we have, my friend, is past experience is what foretells the future. Okay, can we live with that? All right, let's look at our past capital outlays. Okay, have they been well within budget?
Yes.
No.
Our capital outlays
No.
for our projects, Odin?
No.
I've
How
been
much,
watching.
let's start.
Just a
Look,
minute.
I don't want to
Yeah.
argue, I've got the floor, I'd like to finish it, okay? And when you get on the council, you can answer it. But what I'm saying is that we overrun almost everything we touch. Start with the ball fields, the overlay of the roads up here, okay? Orchard Park, okay, doubled. So let's don't say, oh yes, we're right on top of that, because we're not. So if we go by experience only, we overrun ourselves. Do we expect WashDOT not to? We can't hold them to a different experience level than we hold ourselves. So the only thing that we can actually say is there's going to be overruns. And not one person here can say, oh yeah, it's going to be 1 million, 2 million, 3. And that's the only part that bothers me. Katie said it, it's a straightforward project. It's the money that's not straightforward. And we all say, yeah, we can go 4, 5, 6 million. How are we going to get that money? Where's that going to come from? Because we need to talk about that at some point too.
The two of the projects you're referring to, ball fields and Orchard Park, they're overrun on scope, not on budget. The scope was designed
There's a big difference.
very
let's
from
say
construction management standpoint.
it's a big difference. It still costs them sitting out there double what we thought it was going to
It has
cost.
nothing to do with construction management.
It doesn't matter what it had to do with. It had to do with outcome. Okay? Do you care what the difference is why these people got to reach in their pocket? You want to label it, go ahead and label it. But why can't we just call it what it is? It costs more than
I'll
we
be done arguing.
expected. We're not arguing, we're having a
Point of order.
discussion. Okay? There's nothing to tab about there. We're just having a discussion. But what I'm saying is that if there's overruns, you can label it anything you want, but it still comes out of somebody's pocket.
Ball
We
fields,
don't even know
ball
what
fields
they're.
and Orchard Park, we approved. We as council approved those.
I'm not debating that. I asked you if it came
We
in for
approved the scope,
budget.
and they came in.
Did it come in for budget?
Yes, it did.
No, it didn't. Not until after we voted to pay twice as much for it.
After we approved the budget for crying out loud.
Okay.
Based on
You
scope of the
take
project.
it, you take what you say about it.
Other comment, Bob?
Yeah, I'd like to say a couple of words if I could. I missed a couple of meetings, and I'm trying to catch up a little bit and try to get up to date on what's going on around here.
Should I go?
Go on down.
Mr. Grant.
There you go. There you go.
Yes,
And then just put you back.
There.
There you go.
Thanks, I appreciate that. A couple of things. I just want to understand, first of all, that we're going to get credit for the right-of-way against our $6 million that we have to go with. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, that's good. That's very good. The other thing, in my project management and construction management experience, I think we have to look at this overall project and not just this part of it. We have to look at the overall $20 million, the 3 projects that we're talking about, as one project from the city's point of view. And we have to manage that project from the city's perspective. We have to know what are all the parts of the project, what are the segments of it, what are we going to do, when are we going to do it, what's the timing, what are the functions, and when are we going to complete it, and how are we going to complete it within budget. And that's why, in my experience, we always use Gantt charts to put out all these things. There are a lot of questions going on here about, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and when are we going to do it, and what's the impact of that? I'd like to see a Gantt chart for the overall projects. What are we going to do from the city's perspective, and when are we going to do it? What are the cash flows? What is the timing of the cash flows? When are we going to have to come up with this $1 million, or $6 million, or $10 million, or whatever it's going to be? We don't really know what it's going to be yet. But at least we'll know what the plan is from the city's perspective. This is the way we're going to approach this project. I'd just like to see that in writing and documented so that we say, okay, this is our plan from the city's point of view.
So we have, for us to do that, that's project management, and when you get to that point in the project, Gantt charts are very common. Cash flow is really something that if you decide the option 2 or option 3, WashDOT would manage cash flow because the dollars are coming from the state. We don't take the dollars, they go back to the state. There's no grant really involved. They can't.
I'd just like to see that documented. I mean, you're telling me that. I'm going to forget it 3 weeks from now. You know, I'd like to see it documented someplace saying, okay, this is a plan. They're going to finish this amount, and then they're going to give us this amount. We're going to give it back to them. This is when we're going to do it. And if there's any difference, this is when we have to come up with $1 million. I don't know that, and I'd like to see some plan or see some documentation for what the plan is. And I'd like to see some checkpoints along the way in that Gantt chart.
Okay, so
to see when we're going to do these certain things.
Right. So there's the design phase, and you have steps along the way.
Right.
And then you have, and we manage that part. Then you go into the CM phase, and then there's steps along that, and the closeout and the warranties. It goes on. Very complicated. We have a schedule. We can't break down all of those parts until we hire a consultant to help us, and that wouldn't happen until after we sign the contract.
Okay.
So I'm just being brutally honest. We have to sign it. So the contract is that either the city's going to design, and it's the 3 options. I'm not going to repeat it.
Right, I understand.
We have, in order for us to get to where you want to go, Councilmember Moore, we have to get to a contract with WashDOT. And we can't get to a contract with WashDOT until we know which option we want. Because right now, I can't spend any more time with WashDOT. I'm at a fork in the road, and I need to go, am I going to do option 1, option 2, or option 3?
Well, option 2 seems reasonable to me right now. It seems the most reasonable one. And I think we should proceed with it. I don't think that we're obligating ourselves, but that's my preference.
I'm sorry, Bob, what option did you recommend?
Option 2, please.
Shane?
As a point of clarification, we talked about this $5 million credit. I know initially they hadn't locked in. There was a disagreement about that amount. So they've agreed to that $5 million for sure?
They haven't counted.
Okay, so we don't even know necessarily what kind of credit we're going to get.
So
We don't know if they've even agreed to the terms of that yet, because they haven't countered officially.
Correct. And so what
Okay.
the next
I
step?
just want to clarify that. So we don't have a $5 million credit yet. That's what we're hoping for.
So if you, when you read the...
I read it, I know.
I know.
But I'm
So
just saying
basically,
they
they
haven't
have not,
agreed
they've
to it.
counted on other things. They have not counted on any, I had it up on my presentation, anything to do with the money and the credits, they never counted on.
But not countering is not.
Exactly.
That's true, but they've counted on other things. You're absolutely right. And they haven't brought it up in a negotiation way. The only thing they brought up on negotiations was Section 3, which is local responsibility. That's the only thing that is on the table right now for discussion. And according to Mike Gribner, once we figure that out, and we get the county right of way, then this is ready to go. That's what I heard back.
I don't want us to assume that silence is consent. I would rather have them note on the red lines that are going back and forth, accepted.
Correct.
It's
We're
not
not,
no
so,
response.
I
so
think
the
just
way.
a second, Kate. I mean, the reason for this meeting tonight was to talk about the options that we had available.
Correct.
This is, like you say, the decision point in the road. Do you want to own the bridge? Do you want to manage the bridge? Whatever that is. So Bob says, I like option 2. You know, Dan likes option whatever.
I'm stuck in negotiations
We're
until we
stuck
make
there.
that decision.
The point being is that no matter what, we go back to WashDOT and say, okay, here's, based on the information that we have, this is the option we'd like to choose. And they're going to come back again, here's your contract. And at that time, that contract's going to outline the option that you've chosen, your component credits, etc., for this council to decide on. We're just trying to get to that point. You know, and so you can come back in a week and say, okay, well, here's the deal, and guess what, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and, okay, do you agree with this contract? Because if you don't agree with the contract, then we don't sign the contract. But that's what it is. But if we say, well, let's wait another couple weeks and think about what option we want to give it back to them as far as how we want to handle this. Our best spokesman here said, I think you said option 2, correct?
I would agree with that.
You know, Scott, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, I mean, these are the experts that we have.
So,
This is what they think we should do. We share that information with the council so we can come back with a more complete agreement. And at that point in time, hopefully all these little bases will be covered, because we can't go forward and they can't spend any nickels from us until we have a signed agreement.
correct.
And we can also query them as to, again, kind of the overall management, or the review of the expenses, you know, what does that mean in your lingo, right, which was you brought up, you know, we share information. What is that? You know, so that we can get that all dialed down within the next couple of weeks, because they want to get this going, and we would like to have it finished. So, Odin?
Yes, first things first, I apologize to you. That was way out of line to say something like that. But I was trying to get my point across, but I still didn't mean to demean you. Mayor, you're 100% right. But just because 3 options were presented doesn't mean we have to accept any one of those 3, okay? And what makes this board work is the fact that we can draw from option 1, option 2, option 3, and come up with another option altogether. So to be hog-tied into 3, simply because those are what were proposed by someone else, doesn't mean that this body needs to go with any of those.
Well, I don't necessarily, Odin, I just have this little discussion, because Katie, from my understanding, we've had a lot of discussion with DOT as to ownership and management, and how did we get to these 3? It wasn't like, hey, DOT came up and here's 3 options, pick one. I think that there was a.
There very well may have been, sir, but the fact still remains is that none of us were at those meetings.
I know that. That's why we brought these to you. And if there's something different that you'd like to do, Odin, what would they be?
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about was, is there any way that we can take a modified option 2 and see if they would agree to having a co-manager from the city of Liberty Lake to work with them on the contract management, such as our engineer or yourself, someone who is responsible to the city of Liberty Lake.
So
Not to interfere, but to be there and understand what's going on, be included in their roundtables, and to bring the information back in a timely and correct manner.
So the answer is, they might let you shadow and be involved, but they're not going to, when it's a DOT managed project, they're going to make all the decisions and they're going to call all the shots. So, you know, I talked about co-locating and cross, taking our people, their people, making a team. They weren't interested. So right now, it's, the only other option I know of is give them design. So give them design and construction management. That's not, but they're not asking for that, and we're not offering that.
Our best ace in the hole, correct me if I'm incorrect, Scott, is the fact that we have the scope and design. This is what we want to do. At least right now.
I think that's a true statement.
And on the roundabout that Councilmember Kaminsky mentioned, that was designed by WashDOT, and there were so many iterations, double lane, single lane, the landscaping thing, the stormwater thing, the geotechnical thing, the brick thing. I mean, there were so many.
$50,000 with the flagger thing.
Yeah, the transportation thing. So I think us managing the design adds a little bit of certainty, but we will never be able to have zero risk in this project until it's done. We won't know until we're done, but we can manage the issues if we control the design.
Well, to me, I think that's a better start than we had from the beginning, because didn't we think at the beginning that they wanted to do, at least that was my impression, they wanted to do the design and the build and do everything.
Depends on when you talk to them. They have, and don't say that facetiously. Sometimes you do this design, we do that design. You see them this, we see them that. And they've kind of been, over the course of many discussions, this is kind of where we're at right now.
It's our citizens who are going to have to live with the result. So the fact that we have the opportunity to do the design based on our experience here in Murray Lake that Washtenaw doesn't have, to me, is a huge asset.
Well, Mike, I'm sorry.
Thank you. When it comes to the design, we're not going to be designing this in a vacuum. They're going to be involved to some degree with this. I think that's important to realize. That we're not going to sit here and design this thing and say, well, here it is, and we move ahead without them having some input on that. First of all, I'm pleased that we have at least 3 options to discuss. And one, I'm very pleased that we're sitting here having a discussion like we are having, because it's rare that this council has this type of open discussion. And I think that that's good, no matter how some of the audience may look at this, the tempers flare and that type of stuff. We're progressing ahead on a very critical thing that the city needs. I personally am comfortable if I make a decision, which I am, would be option number 2. Number 3 is going to be too costly. I think it's just going to could get out of control. One, I don't want to own a bridge in any way, shape, or form. If we're going to have a design, that's going to be good. I think what we have to do is keep in mind is that none of us are comfortable moving ahead with a blank check. None of us are. The citizens, I think, realize that. We realize that. But we have to move ahead on faith. And I continually look at everything that's come up in our meetings. And we have these little stumbling blocks, these little speed bumps. And we're able to take care of every one of them as they come along. Could we overrun? Yes, we could. From the start, in my mind, I thought $3 to $4 million was skin in the game that we were going to have to come up with when we first started talking about this. And my gut tells me that that may happen. But, you know, if it comes in and it's $27 million, and we put $6 million in, or whatever it's going to be, 10, 15 years down the road, what's the benefits? Okay? We had to move ahead. Because the option is we do nothing. And to me, that is the most critical. If we do nothing, what happens? Now, dealing with DOT, we don't have the control we'd like to have. They're not going to give it up. They're not going to give it to us. So as tough as it may be, we're going to have to move ahead. And there's some being uncomfortable when it comes to signing that agreement and voting on it. A certain part of my brain is going to be, I'm not comfortable with this, but I still have to look at what is best for the city, what's best for the citizens, and what is the best way to move forward.
Bob?
Yes, I was going to comment on it. It seems to me, and I agree with you, Mike, but it seems to me that if we're doing the design work, we're in effect controlling the scope of the project. So that's a control that we wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that's very important. And I think that that's one of the other reasons that I'm in favor of option 2.
So if everyone wants to go forward with option 2, our next step is to let DOT know, and then they'll take all the edits and hopefully come back with accepting it. So that's where we are. But I do want to spend a minute on Spokane County, but I'll wait until we're...
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could make a motion in recognition of option 2 as presented by Q here tonight.
Moved.
So we weren't going to make any decisions at the meeting, but I will bring back, I'm telling you, that we'll bring back a contract that pursues option 2.
Okay.
And then you can approve it or not approve it. But I can't bring that back until we square away the Spokane County right away. So I had a conversation over the lunch hour with Jerry Gimmel yesterday. He was going to reach out to the commissioners. So we need 90 by 100 feet of an easement, not owning it. We need an easement from Spokane County. And there's been multiple discussions with Spokane County, and you're dealing with 3 commissioners, and they all have a different perspective. Commissioner Cooney called me on Monday, and no, last week actually was Friday, And she was wanting to know what, if anything, the city can contribute back to the county in consideration of this easement. So when Jerry and I met, we threw out some options, and I'm waiting to hear back from him. But we're not there yet with the county. And it's very difficult to get, we're working hard to get 3 commissioners to agree. That may or may not be possible. And so we will see how it plays out. It may be where I'm asking the mayor, the fire district, our police chief, and you to go to a commissioner meeting to testify about the importance of this to our community, our public safety, and our schools. So we're not there yet, but we might get there.
The issue that the commissioners have right now is to defend.
To protect the right-of-way for a future light rail.
Yeah, that's what I want.
And so they wanted $3 million. And we said no. So the value of this property, if I use the same value that we gave to the Coles, is $60,000. We've also talked about another option, which is when and if you need a light rail station, we can accommodate you, perhaps. Again, it's just a point. And then the last thing is, if we gave you permission to open cut our abutment, then with your project, then we would rebuild the abutment and put the deck back on. Those are the options that were presented. So they open cut an abutment, and then we put the deck and the tiebacks back in. So the odds of this light rail going through is, everyone has a different opinion on that. Some people think it will never go through. I'm sorry.
Mike? Just wanted to make my initial comment is that looking at the proposed agreement and reading it over, because one thing I was very comfortable when I saw it, that we will see monthly, there will be a financial report on what is being spent and everything. I agree with Odin, I honestly got to, where it's a comfortable moving ahead and we don't know what it's going to be. But there is one thing I am very comfortable that could happen. If DOT study goes sideways, the likelihood of this body not standing up and screaming loud to get one's attention is not going to happen. It's not like when I'm sitting on the STA and it's going to be $70 million for a five-mile project. Now it's going to be 90, and everybody sits there and goes, okay, let's do another 20 million. This body will not do that. So I really want us to keep in mind that if we see something's not working well, even though they have final decision, I don't see us sitting back rolling over. I'm very confident that this group is going to go, hold it, something's not right here.
Question, Katie, on that right away question. The city of the Valley, I think, has built trail on top of that right away.
They have, and they have what's called a license to operate their trail, and it's revocable. DOT needs an easement that's non-revocable, so it's called in perpetuity. So the easement has to stay there forever and ever and ever. And DOT won't move forward unless we have an easement in perpetuity. So it's a different, yeah. The Valley got a license to build a trail on that light rail line, but also with a little bit of notice, they will have to abandon the trail if the light rail goes through.
Okay, could you just update us and tell us exactly what we're talking about? We've been talking a lot about Henry Overpass. Is that the whole sum of the money? The 20.9? Is that all for that?
No.
What else does that include?
It includes Barker, and it includes Harvard Road widening and the westbound on-ramp extension. So for purposes of this contract, you might notice that I did say that 20.9 would be overages that occur in Liberty Lake. I put that in here. So the whole project breakdown, and I don't like to repeat myself, but I know I do it often. We've asked for that breakdown. We don't have it yet. But the project that we did have, the total of it was $26.9 million. $5 million of that was right-of-way. So the rest is, when you do the arithmetic, then that's 21.9.
So this is not just a bridge. It's got a lot of other moving components.
And so WashDOT is anxious to move forward because they need the money to start working. So what we want to do is, if we get to a point where you approve a contract, first thing we're gonna do is take our Harvard Road widening and on-ramp extension, take it to, we're at 60%. We take that to 100%, we give it to them by December. They go to add in April, and then that project goes forward. That's on Harvard and the extension. This project, if you approve it, will be, we will hire a consultant. They wanted us to have a consultant on board in like 6 weeks from today. They want us to move fast. The opening of the bridge would be the winter of 2022, which is roughly 3 to 4 months after the high school opens. So the high school opens in
2021.
Yeah.
It's 2021.
The high school opens in the fall of 2021.
Yes.
This bridge is right now, when we looked at all of the steps, we're thinking it's the winter of 2022.
So January.
A year
February
later?
timeframe?
No, 3 months.
With that
That's
same, that same
Fall,
season.
September of 2021 to January or February of
Well, you
2022.
just said winter.
Katie, if I could just interject, it's June of 22.
June of 22? Okay, so 6 months after, yeah, it'll be after the high school opens, the first school year, it sounds like. So we're at June of 2022.
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was March, but.
And there's no possibility of piecemealing this, right?
Well, it's hard to build a half a bridge.
Well, that's not what I meant. I meant if we could do the Harvard overlay, okay, or the extension, get that worked out, move on to the others, or is this, we do the whole thing?
They are responsible for spending the money in the biennium that it was approved to be spent, and it has to be spent by 2022. So they can't hang on to the money if they don't spend it. So it has to be spent in those bienniums. Pardon me?
So there's a lot of things that are going to be happening in parallel.
It's a big project for our community, and we want to bring it back, but again, I need to work with the county right now, because I can't, you won't see this contract come back to you until we iron out things with Spokane County.
Katie, do we expect to see the breakdown of the budget come back when we're actually looking at the final agreement to approve?
I hope so, yeah. I've asked for it, I'll ask for it again.
And also in those numbers, will there be any soft things that we're going to be responsible for? Anything leading up to the bridges or the access or anything like that, that is not in the $26 million project?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is there going to be landscaping? Is there going to be access roads? Is there going to be anything else that the city would be responsible for that is not in the overall project of approximately $26 million?
At this point, we don't believe so, but until we see the breakdown. So what I don't know is how much money do you have in there for a roundabout? How much money do you have in there for landscaping? How much do you have in there for hardware on the bridge?
Right.
Yeah, we just don't have those figures. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. They did tell me that they did build escalation into the estimates, which is good. But I don't know, I have to see the numbers.
I think it's important for us to remember is that the Barker Road, we will not be responsible for any overages on Barker.
That's what I put in here, yeah. There might be savings on the Harvard widening and the Harvard on-ramp that could be applied to Henry.
We're going to be establishing the priorities, or is WashDOT going to be doing that?
The priorities?
The priorities of the three projects, yeah. Are they going to say, you're going to do this one first? Or we're going to do the other one first?
So they're doing the CM on the Barker Road. They're going to do CM on Harvard in certain bienniums. And then this will be the following, the closing project, so to speak, and then they will see on that. So I guess it's going to depend on completeness of work, bid and award, and then the contractor's schedule. So I can't tell you which project's going to go first.
So they're establishing the priority.
They are. They're establishing the
That
schedule.
was my question. Thank you.
Under option two, if we doing the city design, are we going to be designing the roundabout at Barker?
Yes.
No.
No.
At Barker, oh, I'm sorry.
Barker.
The roundabout at Country Vista Mission. At Barker, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
But-
That's being designed right now by the valley.
Okay, so we know how much that's going, basically, how much that's going to cost.
They received $1 million to design that from the state.
Right.
And, yeah, we know what the estimate is.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is this?
Scott, do you know, is it like 2.3?
2.3
2.3.
total, including construction costs.
A roundabout?
It seems rather high.
We thought so.
But we don't get to design it anyway, right?
It's not our design.
So what is our portion of that? I mean, and I'm glad we don't have to pay any of the overages, but what is our liability of the 2.3, 1.3?
Well, if they accept what I wrote, it would be 0.
Sure. And that's really what Senator Pat stated in his hearing, and also the week before in Spokane Valley Council. That's what he said.
That we wouldn't pay for, or that we wouldn't pay for overages?
We wouldn't pay for
Overages.
overages.
But we still have to pay for the construction, and they're estimating that to be about 1.3.
Right, but I'd like to remind everybody, when we looked at the numbers, there was a question that they were showing, these would be rough numbers, $3.2 million had been spent or something like that. We know $1 million went here, and $800,000 went here. So there's still the question, what happened to the other $1 million something?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so that has not come back to us yet, and that is something we will know. I'm assuming we will know before we move ahead on this.
Right, so as we've been designing Harvard and the on-ramp, they have a team of resources that Scott's been coordinating with. Those resources cost money, and there's lots of them. I don't know how many meetings and iterations you did back and forth, but a lot of reviews.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. So we've solidified
Option 2 is what I
option 2,
heard.
correct? That was our.
I will continue with this tomorrow morning.
Okay. So that's the end of today's meeting, other than public comments. Love your public comments. Come on up.
Rush that phone. Is the microphone on?
Why don't we? I know, but they put it on. I'm DG. I live in Liberty Lake. The only thing I'm asking the council and the mayor and the staff to consider as a citizen resident is that when you move forward on any of these projects, if you're able to put enhanced MOUs where you have in writing, where they become legally binding because they are a part of the contract, which most MOUs are not legally binding, but if you can ensure that it fits into the elements of the contract, so that if there is any dispute or if there is any change, that it's written what needs to be done prior to those changes. I understand that you are the government and you're trying to serve us as best that you can. However, I also understand that as a citizen, this isn't the easiest step you're going to make on behalf of this community. And again, it takes up our money, our resources, perhaps taxes later on. If we don't get this close to right, it may not be perfect, but as close to right as we can. So adding enhanced MOUs that allow us to, in case there's a dispute, to say early on, as Member Kennedy talked about, as Member Kaminskis talked about when she said she didn't have full faith in WashDOT, we have to remember that we're also citizens. And if you have one person saying we've worked with them before and we don't have faith because they did not show that faith to us in a project over here, those are important elements that mean we have to look at them twice. Whoever is going to be doing this project, they're going to be watching this video feed. They're going to be listening to what all of you said. They're going to be listening to what the community input was. And they're going to try to get it right because they already have, according to some, they've not fulfilled in the best interest their original obligations. As far as Councilmember Langford, I agree. You're looking out for the finances that may come our way. But again, there are safeguards, Katie, that can be put in there where the WashDOT, the CM, and the city can kind of watch this all the way through to the end. We really don't want another project that goes over by very much. So on behalf of people like me who live in this great community, who want the best for it, I'm speaking for us, using my voice to do that. So do whatever you can in your next deliberations, Katie, with these folks to get as close to perfect as possible. We thank you in advance.
I'd just point out that there is a section in the contract, first contract, about the disputes resolutions and mediation.
Any other comments?
Good evening, Phil Follier, Legacy Ridge. I know this is normally a time for comment, but might I be allowed a couple questions?
Sure.
Thank you. Regarding the comments about the maintenance of the Harvard Bridge, my question is that on the cosmetics of the bridge or is that on the structure of the bridge?
The deck.
So the cosmetics.
Correct. Well, yeah.
Because eventually a bridge needs structural maintenance. So
Right.
when you say this, the state owns the bridge, they will absorb the cost of maintaining structural requirements.
If there was a structural deficiency, the state would repair the structural deficiency. We are responsible for the deck, the lines, the snowplow.
What I would call the
drainage.
cosmetics. Okay. And then my other question is, if the city's going to design the two projects, and once you submit the design and you get the cost estimate back, will you be allowed the opportunity to revise that design if you don't like the price?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
And just a reminder, we're opening bids, I think, this week to redeck Harvard Road. Is that correct,
Yes.
Scott?
Friday.
So we're going to put a new driving surface on it before we widen it.
Other comments?
Thank you. I'm Holly Woodruff. I live on Fairway Road here, just down from the elementary school. First, I'd like to thank Katie and Scott and whoever else helped you with all this, because I cannot begin to imagine how much work this has been dealing with all these different entities. I also appreciate the council's discussion. Whether it gets a little testy or not, it shows that you're passionate, it shows that you care, and I appreciate that you do that. I also have a couple questions, if that's okay. First off, we've already designed the Harvard Road widening, and that's been submitted, correct?
So it's been, go ahead.
Oh, it's a 60%.
60% design, okay. And I think you did say that earlier. Okay. And Spokane Valley is designing the Barker Road roundabout. So we're based. So I was at this council meeting where the WashDOT representative, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name, said that WashDOT considers this one project. But are there separate contracts for each part of it? Because now you're talking about just Henry Road?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's 4 projects, 3 contracts. Okay, one will be for Barker, one will be for Harvard, on-ramp and widening, and then Henry.
Okay.
Yeah, 3
Okay.
contracts.
Super. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
So it's going to be 3 separate?
3 separate contracts.
But they all follow the scope of the
But they all follow the umbrella of the funding.
Any other comments? Please. Going once, twice, we're out of here.
Thank
I'm sorry, I was in front of you.